Ava Carter had always believed that control was something a person built slowly, piece by piece, through discipline and routine. It was a quiet confidence of knowing where her life was going, even if the destination was still far away. Every morning, she woke up at 6, followed the same schedule, and reminded herself that stability was something she had earned, not something she had been given. That belief stayed with her even on nights like this one. The city stretched endlessly around her, glowing under the soft haze of streetlights and distant traffic. It was late, later than she preferred, but not dangerously so. Ava had just finished a long shift at the downtown clinic, where she worked as a medical assistant. The hours were exhausting, but the job gave her something she valued deeply: independence. She walked along the sidewalk with steady steps, her coat wrapped tightly around her against the cool evening air. The streets were quieter than usual, with only the occasional car passing by. Storefronts were closed, their windows dark, reflecting her figure as she moved past them. At first, nothing felt unusual, but then she noticed a car. It was parked along the side of the street, about half a block behind her. Black, sleek, expensive enough to stand out in a neighborhood that had seen better days. Ava didn't think much of it at first. Cars came and went all the time. Still, something about it stayed in her mind. She continued walking, her pace unchanged, her posture calm. Years of living alone had taught her not to show fear too quickly. Fear attracted attention. Calm created distance. A few seconds later, she heard the engine. The car started slowly, almost quietly, and began moving down the street. Ava didn't turn around immediately. Instead, she used a reflection in a nearby window to watch it. The headlights stayed low. The speed was controlled. It wasn't rushing. It wasn't hesitating. It was following. Her heartbeat shifted. Not faster, not yet, but sharper. More aware, she adjusted the strap of her bag slightly, keeping her movements natural. Her eyes moved again to the reflection. The car maintained distance, not close enough to alarm anyone passing by, but not far enough to be ignored. That was when Ava understood something important. This wasn't random. She turned the corner onto a narrower street, one she normally avoided this late at night. It had fewer lights, fewer people, and fewer open businesses. But it also gave her a clearer view of anyone behind her. The car turned with her. Now there was no doubt. Ava's mind began working faster, but her body stayed calm. Panic was useless. Panic made mistakes. Instead, she focused on details. The sound of the engine, smooth, well-maintained. The windows, tinted. The license plate, partially visible, but not enough to memorize fully. She reached into her bag slowly, not for anything specific yet, just to ground herself. Her fingers brushed against familiar objects. Her phone, her keys, something else. She ignored it for now. The car picked up speed. Before Ava could react, it moved ahead of her and stopped abruptly, blocking part of the sidewalk. The driver's door opened. Everything that happened next unfolded too quickly for hesitation. The man stepped out. Ethan Cole did not look like what Ava expected. He wasn't loud. He wasn't aggressive in the way most people imagine danger. There was no shouting, no sudden movement meant to intimidate. Instead, he moved with precision. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a dark jacket that fit him too well to be cheap. His face was calm, too calm. His eyes were focused not on the situation, but on her specifically. That was what unsettled Ava the most. He already knew exactly what he was doing. He crossed the distance between them in seconds. Ava stepped back, her instincts finally catching up with reality. But he was faster. One hand caught her arm, not violently, but firmly enough to control her movement. The other opened the back door of the car. There was no struggle in the way she expected, no chaos. Just efficiency. Ava tried to pull away, but his grip tightened just enough to stop her. Not enough to bruise immediately, but enough to make resistance pointless. "Don't," he said quietly. His voice was low, controlled, almost calm enough to be mistaken for reassurance. That made it worse, because men who needed to shout were unpredictable. Men who stayed calm were dangerous. Ava's mind raced through possibilities. Scream, run, fight. But the street was empty. and he already had control. In one swift movement, he guided her into the car. The door shut behind her with a heavy, final sound that echoed louder than anything else in the moment. By the time she turned to react, he was already in the driver's seat. The locks clicked. The car moved. Just like that, the world outside became unreachable. Ava sat still for a moment, her breathing steady but shallow. The interior of the car was clean, minimal, no unnecessary items, no personal touches. Everything about it felt deliberate. She looked toward Ethan. He didn't look at her immediately. His eyes stayed on the road, his hands steady on the wheel, his posture relaxed, as if he were driving through an ordinary night instead of committing a crime. That calmness created a different kind of fear, because it meant this was not his first time. "You're making a mistake," Ava said, her voice controlled despite the situation. Ethan didn't respond right away. When he finally did, he spoke without turning his head. "No," he said, "I'm not." That answer settled into the space between them like something heavier than fear. Ava watched him carefully now. Every movement, every breath, every small detail. His hand showed no signs of nervousness, no shaking, no tension. His eyes scanned the road, naturally, not once checking the mirrors for panic. This wasn't a man reacting to a situation. This was a man executing a plan. Ava leaned back slightly, forcing herself to think clearly. The doors were locked, the windows controlled from the front, the speed increasing gradually. No easy escape, but she had something more valuable than strength. Awareness. She studied the route, the turns, the time between intersections, the sound of traffic fading as they moved farther from the main streets. Ethan finally glanced at her, just once. That single look confirmed something Ava had already begun to suspect. He wasn't looking at her like a stranger. He was looking at her like someone who already knew her. That realization sent a sharper kind of fear through her, because random crimes had patterns. Planned ones had purpose. "Who are you?" Ava asked. Ethan didn't answer. Instead, he adjusted the mirror slightly, watching the road behind them. That silence told her more than words could. This wasn't about money. This wasn't about opportunity. This was about her. Ava shifted slightly in her seat, her hand moving back toward her bag. Slowly, carefully, every movement measured. She could feel his awareness, even without him looking directly at her. That was another detail she noted. He was paying attention. Always. Her fingers slipped inside the bag again, this time with intention. Her heartbeat remained steady, but her thoughts sharpened. Fear was still there, but it was no longer controlling her, because Ava Carter had spent years building control over her life, and she was not going to lose it without a fight. The city lights faded further behind them as the car moved into darker, quieter roads. Inside the silence, something changed. Not outside, inside her, because in that moment, Ava realized one thing with complete clarity. The man driving the car believed he was in control, but control was never about who started the situation. It was about who finished it. Her fingers closed around something cold inside her bag, something solid, something real, and for the first time since the car door shut, Ava allowed herself to breathe differently, not like a victim, but like someone preparing to act. Ethan's eyes flickered toward her again, just for a second, as if he sensed a shift, but he said nothing, and Ava said nothing, because some moments didn't need words. They only needed timing. Her grip tightened slightly. The object in her hand felt heavier now, more important, more dangerous. And as the car disappeared deeper into the night, Ava slowly began to pull it closer, because whatever Ethan Cole expected from this night, this was the part he never planned for. The silence inside the car changed the moment Ava's fingers fully wrapped around the object hidden inside her bag. It was no longer just fear sitting beside her. It was choice. The cold metal pressed against her palm felt heavier than it should have, as if it carried more than its physical weight. Ava did not pull it out immediately. She kept it hidden, her hand still inside the bag, her breathing carefully controlled. Outside, the city continued to disappear behind them. Street lights grew farther apart. Traffic sounds faded into distant echoes. The road ahead stretched into something darker, quieter, more isolated. Inside the car, everything felt sharper. Every second, every movement, every thought. Ava Carter had never planned to be in a situation like this. She had prepared for danger in abstract ways, late-night awareness, self-defense classes, emergency habits. But those were distant precautions, not realities. Now, reality was sitting in the driver's seat, and survival was no longer theoretical. Her fingers tightened slightly around the gun. She remembered the first time she held it. It had been 2 years earlier, after a string of violent incidents near her old apartment complex. A friend had convinced her to take self-defense seriously. Not just classes, not just awareness, preparation. At first, Ava resisted. She did not like the idea of carrying something designed to harm. It went against everything she believed about control and responsibility. But fear had a way of changing perspective. She trained quietly, learned how to handle the weapon safely, learned how to think under pressure, learned the most important rule of all: only use it if there is no other choice. Now she sat in the back seat of a moving car, realizing that moment might have arrived. But even then, hesitation held her back, because pulling the trigger would change everything. Not just for him, for her. Her mind began running through possibilities with precise clarity. If she acted too soon, she might miss. If she hesitated too long, she might lose the only chance she had. If she succeeded, she would still be trapped in a moving vehicle with the consequences. The weight of those outcomes pressed against her chest harder than fear itself. Across the front seat, Ethan Cole remained exactly the same. Calm, focused, controlled. But something subtle shifted. He hadn't looked at her directly, but his posture changed slightly. His shoulders adjusted. His grip on the wheel tightened just enough to be noticeable. If someone was paying attention, Ava noticed, because now she was paying attention to everything. The silence between them grew heavier, not empty, loaded. Ethan spoke first. "You're thinking too much," he said quietly. Ava's eyes narrowed slightly. His voice was steady, almost conversational, but the words carried meaning beneath them. She said nothing, because silence was safer. Ethan continued driving, his gaze fixed ahead, but his awareness clearly extended beyond the road. "You're trying to figure out the best moment," he added. Ava's pulse shifted, just slightly, not enough to give her away, but enough for her to feel it. Her fingers tightened again around the gun. He didn't know. He couldn't know. And yet, something about the way he spoke suggested otherwise. Ava adjusted her posture slightly, shifting her weight in a way that looked natural. Her other hand rested casually on her lap, her expression controlled. Inside, her thoughts sharpened further. This wasn't just about timing anymore. It was about understanding him. Because Ethan Cole was not reacting like a man under threat. Most people, if they sensed danger, would show it through tension, through aggression, through fear. Ethan showed none of those. Instead, he seemed prepared. That realization created a deeper kind of unease, because it meant he had already considered this possibility. Ava slowly let her gaze move across the interior of the car again. Still nothing personal. No distractions. No signs of carelessness. Everything about this situation had been planned carefully, including her. "Why me?" she asked finally. The question came out steady, controlled. Ethan didn't answer immediately. He let a few seconds pass. Then he spoke, his tone unchanged. "Because you were supposed to be predictable." Ava felt that sentence settle into her mind with unsettling clarity. Supposed to be, meaning something had already gone wrong. Meaning she was not behaving the way he expected. That gave her something she needed, leverage. But it also raised another question. If she was unpredictable now, what did he expect her to do? Her fingers pressed lightly against the trigger guard, not touching it directly yet. She imagined the movement, the speed required, the distance, the angle, the moment. Her training resurfaced in fragments. Control your breathing. Don't rush the decision. Know your outcome before you act. But training did not prepare her for this, because this was not a controlled environment. This was real, uncertain, irreversible. Ethan's voice broke through her thoughts again. "You're not like the others," he said. Ava's eyes shifted slightly toward him. The others. That single phrase carried too many implications. How many? She asked quietly. Ethan didn't respond, but the silence itself was an answer. Ava felt a chill move through her, because whatever this situation was, it had happened before. That realization should have made her more afraid. Instead, it made her more focused, because patterns could be broken, and she intended to break this one. The road ahead grew darker as they moved farther from the city. Fewer lights, fewer signs of life, fewer chances. Ava knew time was running out. She could not wait forever, but she also could not act blindly. Ethan adjusted the mirror again. This time, his eyes met hers directly through the reflection. For a brief second, everything felt still, connected, measured, as if both of them were waiting for the other to make the first real move. Ava made her decision. Slowly, carefully, she began to lift the gun inside her bag. Not enough to reveal it, just enough to prepare. Her breathing slowed. Her focus narrowed. Everything outside the car faded. All that mattered was the space between them. The distance, the timing, the outcome. Her finger moved closer. Just a little more. Don't. The word cut through the silence instantly. Ava froze. Her entire body went still. Because Ethan's voice had changed. Not louder, not aggressive, but certain, completely certain. He didn't turn around. He didn't look at her. But his next words confirmed everything she feared. If you take it out now, he said calmly, you won't make it past the first shot. Ava's grip tightened instinctively. Her heart pounded once, hard enough to break through her control, because there was no doubt anymore. He knew, not guessed, knew. The air inside the car felt heavier, thicker, more dangerous. Ava slowly withdrew her hand slightly, not releasing the gun, but not advancing either. Her mind raced through possibilities again, but this time the equation had changed, because now she was no longer the only one aware of the weapon. You're not the first, Ethan added quietly. That sentence hit harder than anything else, because it meant he had faced this before, handled it, survived it. Ava forced herself to stay calm. Fear would only make things worse. Instead, she focused on the one thing that still mattered, understanding him. Then why aren't I dead? She asked. Ethan's hands remained steady on the wheel, his expression unchanged. When he answered, his voice carried something new, not emotion, but something close to it. Because you're not supposed to be. That answer didn't bring relief. It brought something else. Confusion. Because everything about this situation suggested danger, control, threat, and yet he was not acting like someone who intended to harm her immediately. That contradiction unsettled her more than violence would have. Ava slowly loosened her grip, just slightly. Not enough to give up control, just enough to think more clearly. Something about the situation felt wrong. Not just dangerous. Wrong. The plan, the behavior, the calmness. None of it aligned with what she expected from someone who forced a stranger into a car. Ethan finally turned his head, just enough to look at her directly. For the first time since this began, his expression shifted. Not much, but enough. There was something behind his eyes now, something deeper than control. You're asking the wrong questions, he said. Ava held his gaze, because now she understood something important. This was not just about survival. This was about truth. And whatever truth Ethan Cole was hiding, it was far more dangerous than the gun in her hand. The car slowed slightly as they approached another turn. The road ahead disappeared into darkness. Ava's heart remained steady now, not because she was safe, but because she was ready. She still had the gun. She still had a chance. But now she also had something else, a realization. She was not just trapped inside this car. She was inside something much bigger. Something planned, something intentional, something that had nothing to do with random violence, and everything to do with her. Ethan looked forward again, his voice returning to that same calm tone. You should put away, he said. Ava didn't move, because now, more than ever, she needed to understand why. And just before she could respond, Ethan spoke one final sentence, a sentence that changed everything. I know exactly what kind of gun you're holding, he said quietly. The moment Ethan said he knew exactly what kind of gun Ava was holding, something inside her shifted. Not fear, Not panic. Something deeper. Because fear came from the unknown. But this was something else entirely. This was exposure. Ava did not move her hand. The gun remained hidden inside her bag, her fingers still wrapped tightly around it. But her mind had already begun racing through a different kind of calculation. How could he know? Not just that she had a weapon, but the type, the detail, the certainty in his voice. Ethan continued driving as if nothing unusual had happened. His eyes stayed on the road, his posture relaxed, his breathing steady. There was no tension in him, no sign that he had just revealed something that should have completely changed the balance between them. But it had. Completely. Ava's voice came out lower now, sharper. "How long?" she asked. Ethan didn't answer immediately. That silence stretched longer than it should have, long enough to confirm something Ava didn't want to accept. Then he spoke. "Long enough," he said. That answer did not satisfy her. It made everything worse. Because vague answers meant one thing. There was more he wasn't saying. Ava slowly pulled her hand out of the bag, leaving the gun hidden but no longer actively gripping it. Not because she had given up control, but because the situation had changed. This was no longer just a physical threat. This was something calculated, something designed. "You've been watching me," she said. It wasn't a question. Ethan nodded once, barely noticeable. "Yes." The word landed quietly, but its impact was immediate. Ava leaned back slightly, her mind reconstructing the past days, the past weeks, searching for signs she might have missed. Her routines, her walks, her job, her apartment. Every moment suddenly felt exposed. Every normal detail now felt like something observed. "What do you know?" she asked. This time, Ethan answered without hesitation. "Your name is Ava Carter," he began calmly. "You work at a downtown medical clinic. Morning shifts 3 days a week, late shifts the rest. You take the same route home almost every night." Ava's chest tightened, because those were not guesses. Those were facts. "You live alone," Ethan continued. "Small apartment, 3rd floor. You leave your kitchen light on when you're not home." Ava's breathing slowed, but her pulse sharpened, because that detail meant he had been close enough to see inside her life. "You started carrying that gun 2 years ago," he added, "after a break-in across the street from your old building." Ava's eyes locked onto him. That was not something anyone could find easily. That was not public. That was personal. That was history. Her voice dropped further. "Why?" she asked. Ethan didn't answer immediately again. Instead, he turned slightly at an intersection, guiding the car onto an even darker road. "You weren't supposed to notice anything," he said finally. Ava felt something cold settle inside her, because that sentence confirmed the worst possibility. This wasn't random. This wasn't a mistake. She had been chosen. "Why me?" she repeated. This time, her voice carried more force, more urgency. Ethan exhaled slowly. "Because you fit the pattern," he said. Pattern. That word echoed in Ava's mind. "What pattern?" she demanded. Ethan remained calm. "The kind that doesn't ask questions," he replied. Ava almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was wrong. Completely wrong. "You picked the wrong person," she said. Ethan glanced at her briefly. "I know," he said. That answer sent a sharper chill through her than anything else he had said so far, because it meant one thing. He had realized it too late. Ava shifted slightly in her seat, her body still tense, but her mind now focused in a different direction. This was no longer just about survival. It was about understanding the situation she had been forced into. "You said I wasn't supposed to notice anything," she said slowly. "So what happens when I do?" Ethan's grip on the steering wheel tightened just slightly. Not enough for most people to notice. But Ava noticed. "That complicates things," he said. "How?" she pressed. Ethan didn't answer. That silence was louder than anything else. Ava looked out the window for a moment, watching the empty road pass by, then back at him. "You're not doing this for yourself," she said. It was an observation, a conclusion. Ethan didn't deny it. No. That single word changed everything again, because now there was someone else. Someone behind him. Someone bigger. "Who?" Ava asked, Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. For the first time, there was resistance in him. Not fear, not hesitation. Something closer to restraint. "That's not your concern," he said. Ava shook her head slowly. "No," she replied. "That's exactly my concern." Because now the situation was no longer just about him. It was about whoever was controlling him. And that made it more dangerous. Much more dangerous. Ava leaned forward slightly, her eyes fixed on him. "You planned this," she said. "You watched me. You followed my routine. You knew what I carried." She paused, which means this isn't about chance. Ethan remained silent, but his silence confirmed everything. Ava's voice grew steadier. "Someone sent you." Still no response. "But you're not comfortable with it," she added. That finally got a reaction. Small, subtle, but real. Ethan's eyes flickered slightly, just for a second, and that was enough. Ava leaned back again, processing what she had just confirmed. He wasn't just working for someone. He didn't fully agree with it. That meant there was a fracture, a weakness, something she could use. But it also meant something else. This situation was bigger than both of them. "Why me?" she asked again, more quietly this time. Not demanding, trying to understand. Ethan took a longer breath this time, as if deciding something. "You're connected," he said. Ava's brow tightened. "To what?" Ethan didn't answer right away. Instead, he slowed the car slightly as they approached another isolated stretch of road. "You're asking questions you don't want answers to," he said. Ava didn't hesitate. "Yes, I do." Because at this point, not knowing was more dangerous than knowing. Ethan was silent for several seconds. Then he spoke again. "You've been living your life like it's yours," he said. Ava frowned. "Because it is?" Ethan shook his head slightly. "No," he said, "it isn't." That statement hit harder than anything else so far, because it didn't just threaten her safety. It threatened her reality. "What does that mean?" she demanded. Ethan didn't look at her, but his voice carried something heavier now. "It means you've been walking around thinking your past is behind you," he said. Ava felt her chest tighten, because now the direction of the conversation had changed. Completely. "My past?" she repeated. Ethan nodded. "That's where all of this started." Ava's mind began pulling at old memories. Fragments. Disconnected pieces. Things she had never fully questioned before. Things she had chosen not to think about. Her childhood. Her family. The things that were never explained. "You don't know what you're talking about," she said. But her voice lacked the certainty it had before. Ethan noticed. "Yes," he said quietly. "I do." The air inside the car felt heavier again. More intense. More personal. Ava looked at him carefully now. Not just as a threat, but as someone who held answers. Answers she didn't even know she needed. "Then explain it," she said. Ethan's grip tightened slightly on the wheel again. And this time he didn't hide it, because what he was about to say mattered. A lot. "You were never the plan," he said. Ava's heart skipped once. "What?" Ethan exhaled slowly. "You were just the way in." That sentence changed everything, because it meant she wasn't the end goal. She was a path. Ava felt a deeper kind of fear now. Not immediate, not physical, but something more unsettling. Because being the target was one thing. Being the connection to something worse. That was something else entirely. "Who?" she asked again. This time, her voice was quieter, but more serious. Ethan finally looked at her directly, and for the first time, there was no distance in his gaze. No control. Just truth. "You're not the target," he said. Ava's breath caught slightly. "Then who is?" Ethan held her gaze for one more second. Then he looked back at the road and said the one thing she never expected. "The real target," he said slowly, "is someone from your past." The words stayed in the air long after Ethan said them. The real target is someone from your past. Ava did not respond immediately, because for the first time since she was forced into the car, fear was no longer coming from present. It was coming from behind her, from things she had spent years trying not to remember. The road ahead blurred slightly as her focus shifted inward. Her breathing slowed, but her thoughts became louder, sharper, more dangerous. Her past. For most people, the past was something fixed, something finished. For Ava Carter, it had always felt unfinished. "You're wrong," she said quietly. But even as the words left her mouth, she felt how weak they sounded, because deep down, something inside her already knew. Ethan did not argue. He didn't need to. Instead, he let the silence build again, giving her just enough space to confront what she had been avoiding for years. "You changed your name," he said calmly. That sentence hit harder than anything else. Ava's head turned sharply toward him. "What?" she said, but her voice carried more shock than denial. Ethan kept his eyes on the road. "You weren't always Ava Carter," he continued. "That name came later." Ava felt something tighten in her chest, because now he wasn't guessing. He was opening doors she had locked a long time ago. "You don't know what you're talking about," she said again, but there was no force behind it this time. Ethan exhaled slowly. "I know enough," he replied, and that was the problem. He didn't know everything, but he knew enough to break the illusion she had built around her life. Ava turned her gaze away from him, staring out the window into the darkness. Memories did not come all at once. They never did. They came in fragments, broken pieces, voices, places, moments she had buried because they didn't fit the life she wanted to live, the life she had created. "You left a long time ago," Ethan said. "Started over. New city, new job, new identity." Ava closed her eyes for a second, because hearing it out loud made it real again. She had not just moved, she had erased. Everything before a certain point in her life had been carefully removed, not forgotten, hidden. "Why?" Ethan asked. This time, his voice carried something different. Not control, not calculation. Curiosity. Ava opened her eyes slowly, because now the question mattered, not just to him, to her. For years, she had avoided answering it, even to herself. "I didn't have a choice," she said finally. Ethan glanced at her briefly. "Everyone has a choice." Ava shook her head. "No," she said, "not like that." Because choices implied freedom. And back then, she hadn't had any. The car moved deeper into the empty stretch of road, but inside, something shifted. The conversation was no longer about control. It was about truth, and truth had a way of pulling everything else with it. "You grew up around people like this," Ethan said. Ava's eyes moved back to him. "What people?" Ethan didn't hesitate. "Dangerous ones." Ava looked away again, because that word was too simple, too clean. Dangerous didn't explain what she had seen, what she had lived through, what she had escaped. "You don't understand," she said. Ethan's voice remained steady. "Then help me." That was the first time he had asked anything from her. Not demanded, not controlled. Asked. Ava hesitated, because opening that part of her past meant facing it again. And she had spent years making sure she didn't have to. But now it was here, whether she wanted it or not. "I wasn't supposed to be involved," she said slowly. Her voice felt different now, less controlled, more real. "I was just there." Ethan listened without interrupting. Ava continued. "There were people who came and went," she said. "Conversations that stopped when I walked into the room. Places I wasn't allowed to go. Questions I wasn't allowed to ask." Her hands tightened slightly in her lap. "I didn't understand at first," she added. "I thought it was normal. Because when something is all you know, it becomes your version of normal." Ethan nodded slightly. And then Ava swallowed. "And then I saw something I wasn't supposed to see." The words came out quieter now, heavier. Ethan's attention sharpened. "What did you see?" Ava hesitated again, because that memory, that moment, was the one she had spent years trying to forget. "It wasn't just one thing," she said. "It was everything at once." Her mind pulled her back to a night, a room, a conversation that changed everything. "I realized the people around me weren't just dangerous," she said. Her voice dropped further. "They were powerful." Ethan didn't react, but his silence told her he already understood. "And power like that," Ava continued, "doesn't let people walk away." That was the truth she had learned too late. The truth that forced her to run, to disappear, to become someone else. You ran. Ethan said. Ava nodded once. Yes. And they let you go? That question carried weight, because people like that didn't forget, didn't forgive, didn't lose track. Ava shook her head slowly. No, she said. They didn't let me go. Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. Then how are you still here? Ava took a breath, because that part of the story was harder to explain. I got help, she said. Ethan didn't ask from who, but the question remained between them, because help like that didn't come easily or freely. They made me disappear. Ava added, new name, new records, new life. Ethan processed that quietly, then asked the one question that mattered most. What did it cost? Ava looked at him, because that was the part she never talked about. Everything, she said, and she meant it. Her past, her identity, her connections. Everything that existed before that moment had been erased, not just from the world, from her life. Ethan nodded slowly, as if confirming something. That's why you were chosen, he said. Ava frowned. What does that mean? Ethan's voice remained calm, but the meaning behind it was not. It means someone never stopped looking. Ava felt her chest tighten again, because that possibility, that someone had been searching for her all this time, was something she had tried not to believe. Why now? She asked. Ethan didn't answer immediately, because the answer mattered. A lot. Because something changed, he said finally. Ava's mind raced. Change what? Her routine? Her location? Her identity? Or something bigger? Whatever you were part of, Ethan continued, it's active again. That sentence carried more weight than anything else, because it meant the past wasn't just catching up to her. It was moving forward, evolving, and she was still connected to it, whether she wanted to be or not. Ava felt a growing realization settle inside her. This was bigger than a kidnapping, bigger than Ethan, bigger than anything she had prepared for. You're working for them, she said. Ethan didn't deny it. Yes, the honesty surprised her. But you don't want to, she added. Ethan remained silent, but his silence was enough. Ava leaned back slightly, her mind piecing everything together. The planning, the surveillance, the precision. This wasn't random. It was targeted, calculated, intentional, and she was right in the center of it. Then why help me? She asked. Ethan's grip tightened slightly on the wheel again. Because you're not the problem, he said. Ava frowned. Then what is... Ethan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at the road ahead, as if measuring how much he should say. Then he spoke. The past you left behind, he said, isn't finished with you. Ava felt something shift again. Because now she understood, this wasn't about what she did. It was about what she knew. And what she knew could be dangerous, deadly, important. Her thoughts began pulling deeper into her memory, searching, connecting, trying to understand what part of her past could still matter. And then something surfaced. Not clearly, not completely, but enough. A name, a voice, a presence she had tried to forget. Her breathing changed slightly. Ethan noticed, because his eyes flickered toward her again. You remember something, he said. Ava didn't answer immediately, because the memory was still forming, still incomplete, but growing stronger. And the more it formed, the more dangerous it felt, because if she remembered, then everything Ethan said would become real. And if it became real, then she was no longer just involved. She was the key. Ava's fingers tightened slightly again, not around the gun this time, around the truth. And slowly, quietly, she spoke. There was someone, she said. Ethan's attention sharpened instantly. Who? Ava looked at him, and for the first time since this began, her fear wasn't about the present. It was about what she was about to say, because some names didn't just belong to the past. They carried consequences. Even now, especially now, her voice dropped to almost a whisper, because even saying it felt dangerous. And just as the memory became clear, Ava realized something that made everything worse. It was the same name Ethan had been avoiding the entire time. The name never fully left Ava's lips. But it didn't need to, because the moment it formed in her mind, everything around her started to make sense in a way that felt deeply wrong. the patterns, the fear, the years she spent running without fully understanding what she was running from. Now it had shape. Now it had a face. And that face belonged to someone far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. Ethan noticed the change immediately. Ava's silence was no longer confusion. It was recognition. And recognition meant the truth was closer than either of them wanted. "Say it," Ethan said quietly. Ava shook her head, because saying it out loud would make it real. But reality was already catching up. "You already know," she replied. Ethan didn't deny it. That was enough. The car continued moving through the empty highway, but the tension inside it had shifted again. This was no longer about uncertainty. This was about confirmation. And confirmation came with consequences. After a long silence, Ethan finally spoke. "Victor Hale." The name landed heavily between them. Ava closed her eyes for a brief second, because hearing it from someone else, someone involved, meant there was no more doubt. Victor Hale was not just part of her past. He was behind everything happening now. Ava slowly opened her eyes again. Her voice was steady, but something deeper had changed. "He's still alive," she said. Ethan glanced at her. "More than alive," he replied. "He's stronger than ever." That answer sent a cold realization through her. Because Victor Hale was never just man. He was influence, power, control. The kind of control that didn't rely on fear alone, but on systems, connections, and secrets buried so deep they never surfaced. Years ago, Ava had only seen fragments of his world. Now she was beginning to understand its scale. "What does he want with me?" she asked. Ethan didn't answer immediately, because the answer mattered more than anything else. "He doesn't want you dead," Ethan said finally. Ava frowned. "That doesn't make sense." "It does," Ethan replied calmly. "If you understand what you are to him." Ava felt her chest tighten, because she already knew. She just didn't want to accept it. "I was never important to him," she said. Ethan shook his head slightly. "That's where you're wrong." The certainty in his voice made it harder to ignore. "You were never supposed to matter," he continued. But something changed. Ava's mind raced. Change what? Her escape? Her identity? Or something she didn't even realize? Ethan continued. "You weren't just around the wrong people," he said. "You were close to something valuable." Ava looked at him sharply. "What?" Ethan exhaled slowly. "Information." That word carried weight, because information, real information, was more dangerous than weapons, more valuable than money, more powerful than influence. "What kind of information?" Ava asked. Ethan hesitated, because even saying out loud could be dangerous. "The kind people kill for," he said. Ava felt a chill run through her, because suddenly everything made sense. Why she had to disappear. Why someone helped her vanish completely. Why her past had to be erased so thoroughly. She hadn't just been in the wrong place. She had known something. Something important enough to make her a target even years later. "But I don't remember anything like that," she said. Ethan looked at her. "That doesn't mean it isn't there." Ava's breathing slowed again, because now the danger wasn't just external. It was internal, hidden inside her own memory. "What if I forgot on purpose?" she asked quietly. Ethan didn't dismiss it. "That's possible." Ava leaned back slightly, her thoughts spiraling in a different direction now. Because if she had forgotten, if someone made her forget, then the truth wasn't gone. It was buried, and Victor Hale wanted it back. That realization hit harder than anything else, because it meant she wasn't just a person to him. She was a key, and keys weren't protected. They were used. Ethan noticed a shift in her expression. "You're starting to understand," he said. Ava looked at him again. "Then why keep me alive?" she asked. Ethan's answer came without hesitation this time. "Because dead people don't remember." Silence filled the car again, but now it felt heavier, sharper, because the truth had finally surfaced. Ava wasn't being hunted. She was being retrieved. That changed everything. Her fear, her options, her chances of survival. Because as long as she was useful, she would stay alive. But usefulness had limits. "What happens when I remember?" she asked. Ethan didn't respond immediately, but his silence said enough. Ava understood. When she was no longer needed, she would become a problem. And problems like that didn't last long. The road ahead stretched endlessly, but inside the car, time felt compressed. Every second mattered more now. Every decision carried weight. "Why are you telling me all this?" Ava asked. Ethan's grip on the wheel tightened slightly, because this was the question he had been avoiding. "You deserve to know," he said. Ava studied him carefully, because that answer wasn't enough. Not in a situation like this. "You're helping him," she said. "You took me. You're delivering me." Ethan didn't deny it. "Yes." "Then why warn me?" That was the real question. And for the first time, Ethan didn't answer right away, because the truth was complicated, more complicated than he wanted it to be. "I don't agree with everything he does," Ethan said finally. Ava let out a quiet breath. "That's not the same as stopping it." Ethan nodded slightly. "I know." That admission changed something, because it revealed a crack, a weakness, a moral line that hadn't been completely erased. "You work for him," Ava said, "but you're not loyal to him." Ethan didn't confirm it directly, but he didn't deny it either. That was enough. Ava leaned forward slightly, her mind shifting again, because for the first time since it started, she had something. Not control, not power, but possibility. "If you don't want to do this," she said, "then don't." Ethan's eyes flickered toward her briefly. "It's not that simple." Ava held his gaze. "It never is." Silence followed, but it wasn't empty. It was filled with tension, with decisions forming beneath the surface. Ethan exhaled slowly. "You don't understand how deep this goes," he said. Ava didn't back down. "Then explain it." Ethan shook his head slightly. "Victor Hale doesn't lose control," he said. "Not of people, not of situations." Ava's voice remained steady. "And you're part of that control." Ethan didn't respond, because that was the truth. And the truth wasn't easy to argue against. For years, he had followed orders, completed tasks, stayed within the system, because stepping outside of it, questioning it, came with consequences. Severe ones. "You think you have a choice," Ethan said, "but you don't." Ava's expression didn't change. "Neither do you," she replied. That sentence landed harder than expected, because it was true, and truth had a way of breaking through even the strongest defenses. Before Ethan could respond, something else shifted. A pair of headlights appeared in the rearview mirror, distant at first, then closer. Ava noticed it immediately. "Someone's behind us," she said. Ethan had already seen it. His expression changed slightly, more focused, more alert. "That's not random," he said. The car behind them maintained distance, but it didn't pass, didn't slow, didn't disappear. It followed. Ava felt the tension rise again. "Victor?" she asked. Ethan shook his head slightly. "No," he said. "If it was him, we wouldn't see them." That made it worse, because it meant someone else was involved. Another player, another unknown. Ethan adjusted his speed slightly. The car behind them did the same. That confirmed it. They were being tracked, watched, possibly intercepted. "This just got more complicated," Ethan said. Ava's heart rate increased. "Who else knows about me?" Ethan didn't answer, because the answer was unclear, and uncertainty was dangerous. The road ahead narrowed as they moved toward a more isolated stretch. Fewer exits, fewer options, more risk. Ethan's phone vibrated suddenly. The sound cut sharply through the tension. He didn't pick it up immediately, but he didn't ignore it either, because he already knew who it was. Ava watched him carefully. "Answer it," she said. Ethan hesitated for a brief second, then picked up the phone. He didn't put it on speaker, but the silence on his side of the conversation said everything. He listened, didn't interrupt, didn't respond, just listened. Ava watched his face closely, because expressions revealed what words didn't. And what she saw wasn't calm. It wasn't control. It was pressure, heavy, immediate, dangerous. After a few seconds, Ethan spoke. One sentence. "Yes." Then he ended the call. The car fell silent again. But now the silence was different, more intense, more urgent. Ava's voice came out quietly. "What did he say?" Ethan didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed on the road, his mind processing the order, because this time there was no flexibility, no delay, no room for interpretation. A direct command, clear, final. Ava waited, because she already felt the answer forming. And when Ethan finally spoke, it confirmed everything. "He wants you delivered immediately," he said. Ava's chest tightened, and Ethan's grip on the wheel hardened. "He doesn't care what condition you're in." That sentence changed everything, because it meant time had run out. No more patience, no more caution, just results. Ava leaned back slowly, her mind shifting again. Faster now, sharper, because survival was no longer about waiting. It was about acting, and acting meant risk. Ethan glanced at her one last time, because now the situation had reached its breaking point, between orders and choices, between control and consequence, between what he was supposed to do and what he might actually do. And for the first time since this began, the outcome was no longer certain. The car behind them moved closer, the road ahead narrowed, and the distance between decision and action disappeared completely. Ethan pressed the accelerator slightly. Ava's fingers slowly moved again, this time not just toward a gun, but toward a choice that could change everything. And neither of them knew what would happen next. The road stretched forward, empty and silent, but everything inside the car had changed. The distance between survival and death was no longer measured in miles. It was measured in seconds. Ava's fingers rested lightly inside her bag, wrapped around the cold metal she'd been holding on to since the beginning. But this time it was different. This was no longer hesitation. This was decision. Because now she understood something clearly. If she didn't take control, she would lose it forever. The car behind them moved closer. Not fast, not aggressive, but steady, intentional. Whoever was inside knew exactly what they were doing. Ethan saw it too. His eyes flickered between the road and the mirror. "They're not just following," he said quietly. "They're waiting." Ava didn't respond. Her mind was already moving ahead, analyzing, calculating, because fear was no longer useful. Control was. The phone call still echoed in her head. Deliver her immediately, no matter what condition. That meant one thing. Time was over. Ava slowly pulled the gun from her bag. The movement was controlled, silent, precise. Ethan noticed immediately. But this time, he didn't react the way he did before. He didn't warn her, didn't stop her, didn't even look surprised. Instead, he said something unexpected. "If you're going to do it," he said calmly, "do it right." Ava's eyes shifted toward him, because that wasn't resistance. That wasn't fear. That was permission, or something close to it. "What does that mean?" she asked. Ethan kept his eyes on the road. "It means if you panic, we both lose," he said. "If you think we might survive." That was the moment everything shifted, because Ethan was no longer just a man who took her. He was part of the situation now. And maybe, just maybe, not her enemy. Ava steadied her breathing. The gun remained low, hidden from the rear view. "What are they waiting for?" she asked. Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. "A better position," he said. "Less traffic, fewer witnesses." Ava glanced outside. The road ahead narrowed into a long stretch of isolated highway. No exits, no buildings, no lights. A perfect place for something to go wrong. "They're going to box us in," Ethan added. Ava nodded slowly. Her grip on the gun became firmer. "Then we don't let them." Ethan glanced at her briefly. For the first time, there was something different in his expression. Respect. Because she wasn't reacting like a victim anymore. She was thinking like someone who refused to lose. "What's your plan?" he asked. Ava didn't answer immediately, because the plan was still forming. Fast, sharp, risky. "They expect you to follow orders," she said. Ethan nodded slightly. "Exactly. And they expect me to be scared." "That too." Ava looked straight ahead. "Good," she said quietly. "Then we surprise them." Ethan didn't argue, because surprise was the only advantage they had left. The car behind them moved closer again. The distance shortened. The pressure increased. Ava raised the gun slightly now, not toward Ethan, but toward the space between them. Ready? Focused. What are you doing? Ethan asked. Ava's voice was calm, taking control. Then, without warning, she pressed the gun against Ethan's side, not to harm him, but to make something clear. To anyone watching, it would look real. It would look like she had taken over. Ethan understood instantly. Good, he said under his breath, because now the situation looked different, unpredictable, and unpredictable situations were harder to control. The car behind them reacted. It slowed slightly, creating distance. Try to understand what had changed. That hesitation was enough. Now, Ava said. Ethan didn't hesitate. He slammed his foot on the accelerator. The car surged forward violently. The engine roared as they pushed past normal speed. The sudden acceleration caught the trailing car off guard. For a moment, just one moment, they gained distance. But it didn't last. The car behind them responded quickly, faster than expected, more powerful. They're not amateurs, Ethan said. Ava already knew, because nothing about this felt random. This was organized, controlled, planned. A second car appeared ahead, turning onto the road from a side path, blocking the way. They're closing in, Ava said. Ethan's eyes sharpened. Then we break through. Ava tightened her grip. Do it. The distance between them and the blocking car closed fast, too fast. At the last second, Ethan swerved sharply to the side. The tires screamed against the asphalt. The car barely avoided a direct collision. Instead, it clipped the side of the other vehicle hard enough to spin it slightly out of position. Metal scraped. Glass cracked. But they kept moving. Ava's body slammed against the seat from the force. Her grip stayed steady. Stay focused, Ethan said. I am, she replied. The car behind them didn't stop. It pushed forward again. More aggressive now. More direct. They're done waiting, Ethan said. Ava looked at the road ahead, then at the mirror, then back at Ethan. Then we end it, she said. Ethan didn't question her, because now they were thinking the same way. Not escaping. Surviving. Ava shifted slightly in her seat. On my signal, she said. Ethan nodded. The car behind them moved closer. Close enough now to see the driver clearly. Cold. Focused. Professional. Ava raised a gun. This time, not for show, not for strategy, but for action. Now, she said. Ethan jerked the wheel sharply. The sudden movement threw off the pursuing car's alignment. At the same moment, Ava leaned slightly out of her seat and fired. The sound exploded through the air. The bullet struck the front of the pursuing car. Not enough to destroy it, but enough to disrupt. The driver reacted. The car swerved slightly. That was all they needed. Ethan pushed harder. The engine strained as the distance increased again. For several seconds, it looked like it might work, like they might actually escape. But then, the road ahead curved sharply, and beyond the curve, more headlights appeared. Ava's heart dropped, because this wasn't just a chase. It was a setup. They're everywhere, she said. Ethan's expression hardened. Then we changed the game. Without warning, he turned the wheels sharply off the main road. The car crashed through a narrow dirt path leading into a wooded area. Branches scraped against the sides. The terrain became rough, unstable, dangerous. But it also meant one thing: less visibility, less control for their pursuers. Ava held onto the dashboard as the car bounced violently over uneven ground. Are you sure about this? She asked. Ethan didn't slow down. No, he said, but it's better than staying predictable. The trees closed in around them. The road disappeared completely. Now it was just instinct, movement, survival. The cars behind them followed, but slower, more cautious, because this wasn't their terrain anymore. This was chaos, and chaos favored risk. After several minutes of intense driving, the sounds behind them faded. The headlights disappeared. The forest swallowed everything. Ethan finally slowed the car, then stopped. Silence filled the space. Heavy, unreal. Ava's breathing was uneven, her hands still tight around the gun. Ethan leaned back slightly, his chest rising and falling. For the first time since this began, there was no immediate threat, no movement, no pursuit, just quiet. Ava looked around slowly. We lost them, she said. Ethan didn't respond immediately. He stepped out of the car, checked the surroundings, listened, watched. After a moment, he nodded. For now. Ava stepped out too. The air felt different. Cold, still, but free. For the first time since she was taken, she wasn't trapped. She wasn't controlled. She wasn't waiting. She had acted, and it worked. She looked at Ethan, because none of this would have happened without him. You helped me, she said. Ethan met her gaze. I didn't stop you. That's not the same thing. Ethan didn't argue, because deep down, he knew she was right. Something had changed, not just in the situation, but in him. For the first time in a long time, he had made a choice that wasn't based on orders. That wasn't based on control. That wasn't based on fear. It was based on something else. Something he hadn't felt in years. Ava lowered the gun slowly. Not completely, but enough. Because now, there was a different kind of tension between them. Not fear, not control. Something more complicated. You're not like them, she said. Ethan looked away briefly. Neither are you. Silence followed again. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It was uncertain, fragile, real. Ava exhaled slowly. So what now? She asked. Ethan looked back toward the road they left behind, then toward the deeper forest ahead. We keep moving, he said, because stopping is how they catch up. Ava nodded. That made sense. It always did. They got back into the car. The engine started again, and for a brief moment, it felt like they had actually escaped, like they had broken free from something bigger than both of them. But that feeling didn't last, because as Ethan turned the car back toward a narrow exit path, headlights suddenly appeared through the trees, closer than before, stronger, waiting, not searching, already positioned. Ava's grip on the gun tightened again. Her voice dropped to a whisper. They knew, she said. Ethan's expression darkened, because this wasn't coincidence. This wasn't luck. This was control. Victor Hale hadn't lost them. He had been ahead of them the entire time. The cars moved forward slowly, blocking the only way out. And in that moment, Ava understood something terrifying. This was never an escape. It was a test. And now, they had just walked straight into the next trap. The headlights didn't move. They didn't rush forward. They didn't hesitate. They simply waited. That was what made it worse. Because waiting meant certainty. And certainty meant control. Ava's hand tightened around the gun as she stared through the windshield. The narrow path ahead was blocked by two black vehicles, their engines running, their presence deliberate. This wasn't a search. This was a setup, and now there was nowhere left to run. Ethan didn't reach for a weapon. He didn't panic. Instead, he leaned back slightly in his seat, his eyes fixed forward, his expression colder than before, but not surprised. That was the first thing Ava noticed. You knew, she said quietly. Ethan didn't answer immediately, because the truth was no longer something he could hide behind silence. They were always going to find us, he said. Ava turned toward him sharply. That's not what I asked. Ethan finally looked at her, and in that moment, something shifted completely, because for the first time since she met him, he didn't look like a man following orders. He looked like someone carrying them. For too long. Yes, he said. Ava's chest tightened. Since when? Ethan's jaw clenched slightly. Since before I took you. The words hit harder than anything else, because it meant this wasn't just a mission. It was something deeper, something planned long before she ever stepped into that car. Ava's voice dropped. Then why are we here? Ethan exhaled slowly. Because this is the only way it ends. That answer didn't make sense. Not yet, but something inside it felt real. And that was what confused her the most. The cars ahead didn't move. The engines remained steady, like they were waiting for something specific, or someone. Ava looked back at Ethan. You need to explain, she said. Ethan nodded slightly, because there was no more time to delay it. No more half-truths, Ava added. Ethan didn't argue, because she had earned the truth, even if it changed everything. It started years ago, he said. Ava stayed silent, listening, because now every word mattered. Victor Hale doesn't just build power, Ethan continued. He builds systems, layers, networks inside networks. Ava frowned slightly. What does that have to do with me? Ethan looked straight ahead. You were part of one of those layers. Ava shook her head. No, I wasn't involved in anything like that. Ethan's voice remained calm. You didn't know you were. That answer sent a chill through her, because it meant her past was bigger than she understood. You remember your father? Ethan asked. The question came out of nowhere, and hit harder than anything else. Ava froze for a moment, because her father was a piece of her life she rarely touched. Not because she forgot, because she was told to. He died, she said. Ethan didn't react. That's what you were told. Ava's breath caught, because suddenly, nothing felt certain anymore. What are you saying? She asked slowly. Ethan turned toward her fully now. Your father worked inside Victor Hale's network. Ava shook her head immediately. No, but the denial wasn't strong, because something inside her already felt unstable. He wasn't one of them, Ethan continued. He was against them. That changed everything, because now the pieces started to shift, not randomly, but into place. He was building a case, Ethan said, collecting information, quietly. Ava's hands tightened. That's not possible. Ethan's voice didn't change. He got close, he said, closer than anyone else. Ava felt her chest rise sharply, because now the idea of information wasn't abstract anymore. It was personal, dangerously personal. And when he realized how deep it went, Ethan continued, he tried to get you out. Ava's mind raced. Memories started surfacing, moving, breaking through the silence she had lived with for years. The sudden moves, the hidden conversations, the fear she never understood. He didn't die in an accident, Ethan said. Ava's voice dropped to a whisper. Then what happened? Ethan looked at her. They made it look like one. The words landed with brutal clarity, because now everything changed. Her past wasn't something she escaped. It was something that was taken from her, and the truth had been buried with it. Ava looked away, her breathing uneven now, because this wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about truth, and truth was harder to face than fear. Why are you telling me this now? She asked. Ethan didn't hesitate. Because you deserve to know why you matter. Ava's eyes met his again. And you, she asked, where do you fit in this? That was the question Ethan had been avoiding, and now there was no avoiding it. I was there, he said. Ava went completely still. What? Ethan's voice remained steady. I worked under Victor, he said. Direct operations. Clean work. No mistakes. Ava's grip on the gun tightened. Then you were part of it. Ethan didn't deny it. Yes. The honesty hit harder than denial would have, because it meant he wasn't hiding anymore. I didn't know about your father at first, Ethan continued. Not until it was too late. Ava stared at him, her mind trying to process everything at once. And when you found out? She asked. Ethan's expression shifted slightly. I realized something was wrong. That's it, Ava said sharply. Ethan didn't react to the tone. No, he said. That's when I started watching. Ava frowned. Watching who? You, Ethan said. The answer landed heavily, because now it connected everything. The surveillance, the knowledge, the precision. You've been watching me for years? She asked. Ethan nodded once. From a distance, he said, making sure no one else got to you first. Ava's voice dropped. Why? Ethan's answer came quietly. Because your father saved my life. Silence filled the car. But this time, it wasn't tension. It was impact, because that changed everything. Ava blinked slowly. What? Ethan looked at her directly. Years ago, during an operation, he said, I was exposed, compromised. Your father had the chance to leave me behind. Ava listened carefully. He didn't, Ethan continued. He got me out. Ava's breathing slowed, because now, this wasn't just coincidence. This was connection. He knew what I was, Ethan said, but he still chose to save me. Ava's voice softened slightly. And now you return the favor? Ethan didn't answer right away, because it wasn't that simple. I'm trying to, he said. That honesty made everything more complicated, because now, Ethan wasn't just a man who took her. He was someone who had been protecting her, in his own way, in the shadows. For years, Ava looked down at the gun in her hand, then back at him. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" Ethan exhaled. "Because the moment you know everything," he said, "you become a bigger target." Ava shook her head slightly. "I already am." Ethan didn't argue, because that was true, more than ever now. The headlights ahead flickered slightly. Movement inside the vehicles. They were getting ready. The moment was coming. Ava looked forward again. "Victor knows all this?" she asked. Ethan's expression hardened. "Not everything," he said, "but enough." Ava's voice steadied again. "Then why bring me here?" Ethan's answer was immediate. "Because this is where his control ends." Ava looked at him. "What does that mean?" Ethan reached slowly into his jacket. Ava's gun lifted instantly. "Don't," she warned. Ethan stopped, then slowly pulled out a small device. Not a weapon. Something else. "This," he said, holding it up slightly, "is everything your father collected." Ava's eyes widened, because suddenly the truth wasn't just memory. It was real, physical, alive. "You had it this whole time?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "Hidden," he said. "Protected." Ava's voice shook slightly. "And now?" Ethan looked toward the cars ahead. "Now it ends." The doors of the vehicles opened. Men stepped out, armed, organized, prepared. Victor's men. Ava's heart pounded. But something inside her had changed. She wasn't just reacting anymore. She understood. She knew what she was fighting. And why. "You could have run," she said quietly. Ethan shook his head. "No," he said. "Not this time." Ava raised the gun again. But this time, her hands didn't shake. Because fear had been replaced by something else. Purpose. The men moved closer. Slow. Controlled. Surrounding. Ava stepped out of the car. Ethan followed. The forest stood silent around them, like it was watching, waiting. Everything had led to this moment. The truth, the lies, the betrayal, all of it. One of the men stepped forward, weapon raised. No hesitation, no words, just action. Ethan moved slightly in front of Ava, not to control her, to protect her. Ava noticed, and for the first time, she didn't pull away, because now she trusted him, not completely, but enough to stand beside him, not against him. The distance closed. The tension peaked. Every movement mattered. Every second stretched. And then a weapon lifted, not from the men, but from between them. Ava's gun, raised, steady, aimed, but not at Ethan, not at the men, at something in between. Because now, the choice wasn't just about survival. It was about truth. And truth always came with a cost. The man in front raised his weapon. Ethan's grip tightened. Ava's finger moved slowly toward the trigger. And in that moment, everything stopped, because a gun was pointed. But nobody knew who would pull the trigger first. The silence broke not with a shot, but with a presence. From behind a line of armed men, a figure stepped forward slowly. No rush, no fear, just certainty. Victor Hale. He didn't need to raise his weapon. He didn't need to speak loudly, because control followed him without effort. Ava's grip on the gun tightened, but her expression didn't change. For the first time since this began, she wasn't afraid of him. She understood him. And understanding removed the illusion of power. Victor stopped a few steps away, close enough to see clearly, close enough to end everything. His eyes moved over Ava carefully, studying, measuring, calculating. Then finally he spoke. "You've lasted longer than expected." His voice was calm, controlled, almost impressed. Ava didn't respond, because she wasn't here to impress him. She was here to end what he started. Victor's gaze shifted briefly toward Ethan. "And you," he added quietly. "Disappointing." Ethan didn't react, but his stance shifted slightly. Protective, not defensive. That alone said everything. Victor noticed. Of course he did, because men like him noticed everything. "You chose the wrong side," Victor said. Ethan's voice remained steady. "I chose the truth." Victor smiled faintly. "The truth is a liability." Ava stepped forward slightly, the gun still raised. "No," she said. "The truth is the only reason you're standing here." Victor's eyes returned to her, and for a moment, there was something different in his expression. Not anger, interest, because Ava was no longer reacting like a target. She was confronting him. That made her dangerous. "Your father would have said the same thing," Victor said. The words hit hard, but Ava didn't flinch, because now she knew the truth. And truth gave her something she didn't have before. Control. "You killed him," she said. Victor didn't deny it. "He made a choice," Victor replied. "He thought he could expose something bigger than himself." Ava's voice sharpened. He thought people deserved to know. Victor tilted his head slightly. "And what did that get him?" The question hung in the air. Heavy, cool, real. Ava felt the weight of it. Because this wasn't just about justice. It was about consequence. Victor took another step forward. "Your father was smart," he said, "but he made one mistake." Ava didn't move. "He believed truth protects people," Victor continued. "It doesn't. It destroys them." Ava's finger tightened slightly on the trigger. "Then why are you still alive?" she asked. Victor's faint smile returned. "Because I understand how to control it." That was the difference. Control versus exposure. Power versus truth. Ava understood it now. Fully. Completely. And that understanding led her to one final realization. Victor didn't fear truth. He feared losing control of it. Ethan stepped slightly closer beside her. Not in front. Not behind. Beside. Equal. That mattered. Victor noticed that too. "You think standing together changes anything?" Victor asked. Ava's voice was calm. "It already has." Victor looked at the device in Ethan's hand. "The data," he said, "that's what this is really about." Ethan didn't deny it. Victor nodded slowly. "You don't even know what you're holding," he said. Ava responded this time. "Then explain it." Victor considered her for a moment, then spoke. "Your father didn't just collect evidence," he said. "He collected leverage." Ava frowned slightly. "What does that mean?" Victor's voice lowered. "It means he wasn't just exposing me," he said. "He was exposing everyone connected to me." Ava felt something shift again, because now the danger wasn't limited. It was massive. Political figures, corporate networks, law enforcement, hidden connections buried inside systems no one questioned. If that information was released, it wouldn't just destroy Victor. It would collapse everything tied to him. That was why her father died. Not because he knew something, because he knew too much. "You see now," Victor said, "this was never about one man." Ava nodded slowly. "Yes," she said, "it was about all of you." Victor's expression didn't change. "But you still don't understand the most important part," he added. Ava held her ground. "Then say it." Victor's eyes locked onto hers. "If that information gets out," he said, "people like your father won't be remembered as heroes." Ava's brows tightened slightly. "They'll be remembered as the reason everything fell apart." That was the hook. The truth that twisted everything. Because exposure didn't just destroy the guilty. It destroyed the system. And systems, even broken ones, held things together. Ava felt the weight of that. Because now the choice wasn't simple. It wasn't just right versus wrong. It was consequence versus collapse. Ethan spoke quietly. "He's trying to make you hesitate." Victor didn't deny it. "Because hesitation means she's thinking," Victor replied. Ava's breathing slowed. Because thinking was exactly what she was doing. Not reacting. Not panicking. Choosing. For the first time, she had the power to decide how this ended. Her father's truth. Victor's control. Ethan's loyalty. Her survival. All of it came down to one moment. One decision. Victor extended his hand slightly. "Give me the device," he said. "And this ends." Ava didn't move. Ethan didn't move. The men around them tightened their positions. Weapons ready. Waiting. Victor's voice softened slightly. "You walk away," he said. "Both of you." Ava looked at him. Because now she understood something clearly. Victor wasn't offering mercy. He was protecting himself. Ethan leaned closer to Ava. His voice low. "He's lying." Ava knew. But the lie wasn't the dangerous part. The possibility was. Because walking away meant surviving. But surviving without truth meant her father died for nothing. Ava looked down briefly, then back up. Her expression changed. Not fear, not hesitation. Clarity. She stepped forward, the gun still raised. The distance between her and Victor closed. Every eye in the clearing focused on her. Every breath held. Because this was it. The moment everything ended. Or began. You're wrong, Ava said quietly. Victor's expression didn't shift. About what? He asked. Ava's voice didn't rise, but it carried. Truth doesn't destroy people, she said. It reveals them. Victor's eyes narrowed slightly. Ava took another step. And you've been hiding for a long time. The tension snapped tighter, because now there was no negotiation left. No compromise. Just decision. Victor's voice dropped. You don't understand what happens next. Ava shook her head. I do. Her finger tightened on the trigger. Ethan watched her, not stopping her, not guiding her, trusting her, because now this was her choice. Victor's hand moved slightly. Not fast, but enough. The men around him reacted instantly, weapons lifting. Ready? Ava didn't flinch, because fear was gone, replaced by something stronger. Purpose. She made her decision. The shot broke through the silence. Sharp, final, echoing through the trees. For a moment, everything stopped. Victor's body staggered slightly, then fell. The control, the system, the man behind everything. Gone. The silence that followed felt unreal. Heavy, endless. The men around them hesitated. Confusion spreading, because control had disappeared in a single second. Ethan moved quickly, grabbing Ava's arm. Now, he said, because the danger wasn't over. Not even close. They ran, not looking back, not waiting. The forest swallowed them again. But this time, it wasn't escape. It was survival. Hours later, the first light of morning broke through the horizon. Ava stood alone near the edge of an empty road. Ethan a few steps behind her, the device still in his hand. Everything felt different now. Quieter, heavier, final. It's over, Ethan said. Ava didn't respond immediately, because she knew something he didn't, or maybe something he hadn't accepted yet. Is it? She asked. Ethan looked at her. What do you mean? Ava turned slowly, her expression calm, but distant. Victor was one man, she said, but what he built. She didn't finish, because she didn't need to. Ethan understood. Systems didn't disappear overnight. Networks didn't collapse instantly. Power didn't vanish. It shifted. Ava looked down at the device, then back at the road ahead. What are you going to do? Ethan asked. Ava's answer came quietly. What my father started. Ethan studied her, because the woman standing in front of him was not the same one he took into that car. She wasn't a victim. She wasn't running. She was choosing, and that made her something else entirely. Something dangerous. Something unstoppable. Ava took a step forward, then another, walking away, not looking back, because some things didn't need closure. They needed continuation. Ethan watched her go, knowing one thing for certain. This wasn't the end. It was never going to be. Ava reached the road, the sunlight rising behind her, and in that moment, she realized the final truth. The danger was never over. It was just beginning again.